it's Aiden. Reminder, if you want a lesson, check the link in the description. I made a video a while back about wanting people to oil their valves, because I feel like there's a lot of people out there that just kind of don't, and just kind of let the valves do their thing, and they're sacrificing the longevity, there we go, longevity of their valves and how they play. It just plays a lot better with oil in there, trust me. So that's a really important thing. But there's other parts of the trombone that also need to be lubed regularly. So let's start here, go through the trombone and talk about things that could be oiled, lubed, whatever you want to call it, in order to make the horn work better and last longer. So mouthpiece going into the lead pipe, that is something that's metal on metal. Don't lube that one, because these don't need to move against each other. You want them to stay in place. Okay, we don't need to talk about that. Lead pipe in the instrument. Actually, this is not the worst thing to put some heavy grease on. And heavy is in a small amount of heavy grease, not a ton of grease. It's not a bad thing to put some heavy grease, like just a little bit on your lead pipe as you put it in. So it's not just completely metal on metal contact. The metal on metal contact isn't so bad, but after a while of water getting in there and stuff, they'll corrode against each other, and that's when lead pipes get stuck. So it's good to have a little bit of a barrier, that grease, to keep things moving. I think I have a little bit in here right now. Obviously, the slide, hopefully you're lubing your slide somehow. Maybe even it's just water if you've run out of slide lube or something. Have something on your slide. Don't just play with a dry slide unless you have a P-bone, which works better with a dry slide. Even this, so this is a metal on metal part right here, the spit valve. On my Edwards slide, actually, I had this problem where if I played my slide for a while, the little screw here that keeps it all together, there we go, can't even see it, would back out, and my spit valve would halfway pop off. And I was just like, why does this keep happening? I've never had that problem before. I talked to my tech friend, and he was just like, put a little bit of valve oil on there, and that'll keep the metal parts, instead of the spit valve unscrewing that screw because there's so much friction, it'll just not have the friction, and it'll work better and not unscrew itself. And guess what? It did. So now I lube my spit valves. It doesn't take a lot, just a couple drops. Boom, you're good for like the rest of time, basically. We get to another metal on metal part right here. This is something you actually want to be dry. This is like one of the few parts that's metal on metal that you don't want to be lubed. And that's because this part doesn't need to move. Like, yes, it moves when you put it together, but otherwise, no. Even these threads, I don't like to oil that, because you want that to stay in place. That's something that should stay. Oh, I forgot one already. Wow, it's like the second thing on the trombone. The slide lock. So the reason I'm making this video is someone brought up that their slide lock was stuck, and it happened pretty often. Well, one thing that will help is lube it. All you have to do is take your slide out a little bit, of course, unscrew this all the way, it'll fall off, and stop on the slide, of course, and just put a little bit of heavy grease on there. I use like the bearing and linkage oil that I'd use on my valves, and it makes it work a lot better. It's quiet, it's smooth, it doesn't rattle at all, and it's probably not going to get stuck because the metal's not going to be so tight against itself. So that's a really big one to lube for me, and I do that on all my horns. It just makes it way better to use instead of being scratchy, and usually they buzz after a while. We get to the valves, of course. The actual valves themselves need to be oiled. There's a bunch of different spots that need to be oiled. These are the bearings. You need to oil the bearings with bearing oil. All of the linkages, every single part that's metal and metal that moves, needs to have oil. These linkages are not metal, they're plastic. I still put ball joint oil in these. Makes them quieter and it makes them move better. So everything about the valves, every single part that moves, not just the valves, every part that moves needs to be lubed in some way. Then we get to slides. Guess what? These are just like your slide. Obviously, they don't move as fast and they don't use the same kind of lube. But put some tuning slide grease on these and you'll just have a way better time. Obviously, I put my slides all the way in every time I put my horn away. I think it's just good to keep them moving, and I know where they need to be when they're in tune anyway, because I put Sharpie marks on them because I have to pull them out so far. But it's good to have tuning slide grease on there, because otherwise It's like the lead pipe, if you leave them in one place with no grease on them for long enough, they'll get frozen and they won't move. And that's why you have to get out the t-shirt and pull on them and yank on them and risk breaking things. And then we get to the end of the bell, and there's nothing on this horn, but if you do have a screw bell, it's good to lube this screw bell ring as well. I didn't lube mine for a long time, and it would squeak so loudly when you put it together. It was like the worst squeak of all time. And it would, you know, it would be a little bit slow. And then I just put a little bit of lube around the whole thing. Everything got way better about it. So every single part that moves, except for the slide tenon receiver right here and the ring, or the threads right here, every other part of this should have some kind of lube on it. Dry trombone is a bad trombone. See you guys next time.